In this video, I'm going to talk about the two levers that decide the size of every single Social Security check. Most retirees only know about one of them, but the real money is in the other one. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
Gang, if you're receiving Social Security, here are two numbers that should make you think. The first is the size of the average Social Security check in 2026. That's $2,071. The second is the maximum Social Security payment someone can receive in 2026. That's $5,181. The difference is $3,100 per month. And the difference only gets bigger over time as COLA adjustments are added in. And that happens for the rest of the recipient's life. One of the biggest reasons for this is what's underneath that payment. In particular, it's the Social Security recipient's highest 35 years of earnings. Let me explain. For most people, there are only two levers that they can pull to change the size of their Social Security payment. The first is when they turn that payment on. The second is how much they earn over their lifetime, and in particular, what are their best 35 years of earnings. Now, there are other levers too, but those are the two biggies when it comes to the primary insured's Social Security payment. Of course, there are also levers you can pull for the survivor benefit, for the spousal benefit, and a few others as well. But the ones that we're going to focus in on here today are the ones that can change the size of your Social Security check as the primary earner in the family. Let me begin by saying that most people only think about the first one when you collect Social Security as a lever. Why? Because that's something that's totally within your control at the end of your working years. But the real money is what happens during the 35 years of work history, your best 35 years. Let's talk about them both because they both have an impact on your payment. The first is when you claim. For anyone born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is age 67. At full retirement age, you get 100% of your Social Security payment. But you can claim earlier. You can claim as early as age 62, and you get 70% of your Social Security payment, the one you would receive at full retirement age. Or you can claim later, and you can get 124% of the size of your Social Security payment at full retirement age if you wait until age 70. And the biggest growth happens between age 67 and 70 because your payment continues to grow at about 8%. And that's 8% of your full retirement age benefit. So in that 3-year period, you can grow your payment 24%. So if you have 70% at age 62 and 124% at age 70, the difference between the two is a 77% growth. This means that if your full retirement age benefit is $2,000 a month and you file at age 62, your payment will be $1,400 a month. If you wait until age 70, that's $2,480 per month. But here's the part that a lot of people miss, and that is if you file early, it doesn't just affect you, it also affects the survivor benefit because the survivor benefit is based on the size of the payment to the primary insured. And if they file early, then the payment is lower. If they file later than full retirement age, then that payment is higher. Now, there are a lot of different reasons people file early. They need the money, they want to enjoy life now while they still have energy, and they have enough to carry them over later. And one or two people on every live stream that I host, and I host them Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., says, well, I want to claim the money now and invest it. And in theory, that could work. The reason I say in theory is because most people say that they're going to invest it, but in practice, they don't really invest it. They have more money to do more things, and they go out and they buy a new car or they do something else. The other aspect is a lot of people say this and then they realize that they can't keep working because if they earn too much, they have to give part of that payment or all of that payment back. And so that sort of defeats the purpose to claim early and invest if you can't actually keep the money to invest. And then the final point is that Social Security payments are predictable, they're certain, and the markets are not. And so it's important to consider your risk factor, your risk tolerance really, when it comes to taking the money and investing it, because you're taking one type of cash flow and you're transforming it into something else. Now, another point that gets brought up often about filing early is that people are concerned about break even. And they look at their family history, they look at their own health, and they say, I might not live to break even, so I would be better off taking the funds now. That's a valid point. And for most people, the break even point is somewhere between late 70s and early 80s, depending on which 2 points on the continuum you're talking about. But here's a really important point for most retirees. Break even isn't necessarily the right analysis for a lot of people. Why? Because Social Security isn't an investment account. It's there for longevity insurance. It's there to protect other family members in the event that you pass early. There are a lot of functions that Social Security addresses. But here's something that doesn't really get discussed a lot, and that is Social Security and break even is only one lens, one view of Social Security. And it might be the wrong lens because Social Security isn't an investment account. It does provide cash flow in retirement, and if you're comparing it to other investments, it's going to have positives and negatives, more positives most of the time. But the other aspect is that it's longevity insurance. The whole reason that Social Security is structured the way that it is to protect you during your most vulnerable years, and that's your 80s and your 90s. If you live a normal lifespan, then break even is close to a wash. But if you're one of those people that lives longer than average, well, then break even becomes a lot more meaningful. And the fact is, costs in retirement continue to go up year after year. Think about the cost of living adjustment and other things like Medicare, the Part B premium. Those continue to go up year after year, and if you have a higher base, then it's easier to pay those additional costs. Speaking of Medicare, gang, Medicare can be confusing. It can be overwhelming. Just ask anybody who's age 65 or older, and they'll tell you that this is true. They'll spend hours of time analyzing all the different plans, only to find that they made the wrong choice, costing them hundreds or even thousands of dollars a year. Now, on this channel, we have 3 affiliate relationships. One is our trusted Medicare partner, Chapter. Chapter is the only national advisor that looks at and recommends every plan. They're totally free to you. It doesn't cost more to use them. They save their clients an average of $1,100 per year, and it takes about 20 minutes of your time. Also, they're really nice people. They're really easy to work with. If this is of interest to you, give them a call at 440-703-1224 to see if they can help. Now let's look at the other lever, because this one's a lot more interesting. Social Security doesn't just look at your last few years of earnings and say he or she earned a lot, and therefore we're going to pay them more than someone who didn't earn a lot in the last few years. The SSA looks at your 35 highest earning years after they've indexed those years into today's dollars. That's it. That's the lever. Once they have those 35 years, they add them together, divide them by 420, and they put them through a formula called bend points, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, what happens if you miss a few years? Well, you get zeros for those years. And if you have a lot of zeros, then your average goes way down, and that number that gets fed into the formula is a much smaller number. So what this means in practicality is that if you would have worked 35 years, but you took 5 years off because you wanted to raise a family or care for a parent or you were sick, I don't know, that means that you have 30 years of earnings and you get 5 years of zeros. And that does have an impact on the size of your Social Security payment. 10 years is much worse. 15 years, even worse. But the rule works the other way too. If you already have 35 years of earnings and you continue to work and you add on some really big earning years, the smaller years fall off and they don't mean anything. So you can manage the size of your Social Security payment simply by having several good years at the end of your career, which a lot of people do. And that, by the way, is why some people even work part-time at the end of their career, because those part-time earnings can replace some very low earnings that existed 30 years ago, 35 years ago. But what if you earned a lot of money back in the day, but it wasn't considered a lot of money today? Let's say you earned $10,000 back in 1986. Is your Social Security payment based on $10,000? No, it's not, fortunately, because if your Social Security payment was based on your earnings at the time you earned them, you'd have a very small check. Those earnings are indexed into today's dollars. For example, a $10,000 year in 1986 is the equivalent of about $40,000 today. And so that $10,000 in 1986 is multiplied times 4x. in 2026. So how is that determined, by the way? Well, you take the national average wage, in this case 1986, you compare it to the national average wage in the year that you turn 60. So if, for example, you are now filing for Social Security at age 62, then the multiplier when you were age 60 would be 4x. Let me explain. $10,000 earned in 1986 times 4.0323 equals $40,322.88 in today's dollars. $10,000 in 1996 is multiplied times 2.6953, and today's equivalent is $26,953. And $10,000 earned in 2006 is multiplied times 1.8071, that's $18,070.90 in today's dollars. Earnings from age 60 onward aren't indexed. They're given a multiplier of 1.0. So the indexing stops at age 60. So a $10,000 paycheck back in 1986 has the same weight on your earnings as $40,322 today. So anything you earn from age 60 on has a multiplier of 1.0. They help your average in a different way. And that is the fact that most people earn more at the end of their career than they do at the beginning. So that helps raise your best 35 years. Now, once the SSA has your best 35 years indexed, they'll add those together and divide by 420. What's 420? Well, there are 420 months in 35 years, and we want to get to a monthly average. It's called the average index monthly earnings, and this is what's used in the formula. And one point that comes up here is what happens if you have a mega earner? Let's say that they're a great bond trader or a hedge fund manager and they're earning $10 million a year for 35 years. Wouldn't their payment be more than $5,100 per month? The answer is no. And the reason is because earnings are taxed, Social Security taxed, up to a certain threshold. For example, in 2026, it's $184,500, and it was $176,100 in 2025. If you earn more than that, it's not taxed, and it doesn't count towards your Social Security payment, no matter how much you earn. If we use 2026 as an example, the maximum average index monthly earnings for 2026 someone could have, $184,500 divided by 12, is $15,375 per month. It's still a lot of money, but it's not endless. And every year, the maximum you could earn was lower and lower, but the multiplier is higher and higher, so it kind of offsets itself. So what happens when the average index monthly earnings is determined? Well, what happens next is what I call the great equalizer. That number is fed into Ben points. It's a formula. And the reason I call it the great equalizer is that if you earn a lot of money, your haircut is massive. And if you earn a modest amount of money, then your haircut is not that much. Let me explain. Ben points works as follows. Everybody gets 90% of the first $1,286 of average indexed monthly earnings. And for the big earners out there, they have more than $1,286 AIME. For those that earn more, they get 32% of any amounts between $1,286 and $7,749. And for those that earned a lot, they get 15% of the balance. Anything above $7,749, they receive 15% up to the cap. The result is what's called the primary insurance amount. This is the amount that you receive at full retirement age. The actual term isn't the great equalizer. It's called progressive payments, and that means that lower earners receive a lot more of their contribution than higher earners. But nobody receives less by earning more than someone who earns less. And here are the points that a lot of people miss. The Ben points are locked in the year you turn 62, not the year that you file. Let me bring it all together for you with an example. Imagine someone with $2.5 million of earnings after indexing over their best 35 years. Step one is to divide $2.5 million by 420 months to get the average indexed monthly earnings. This is an AIME of $5,952.38. Now you run that through the 2026 formula. The first $1,286 is multiplied times 0.9. which gives $1,157.40. The next portion from $1,286 up to $5,952.38 is multiplied times 0.32. That works out to be $1,493.24. Since our average index monthly earnings is below the second Ben point of $77.49, there's nothing in the third bracket. When you add it all up, the primary insurance amount, the amount that the Social Security recipient receives at full retirement age, is $2,650.64. And because Social Security rounds down to the nearest dime, that's $2,650.60. And this is what someone would receive at full retirement age before any additional cost of living adjustments are added to that number. Most retirees obsess over one of these two levers and ignore the other. They worry about when to file, which is good, of course. They should worry about when to file because there's real money in that decision. But the part underneath it, the 35-year rule, the indexed earnings, the bend points, that's where a lot of retirees are leaving real money behind simply because they just don't understand it. 3 more years of part-time work at, say, 64, 65, 66, can do more for a Social Security payment than most people realize simply because they didn't earn a lot of money back when they first started working. Now, what can you do with this information? Well, the first is to make sure that your earnings record is correct. Log on to SSA.gov and pull your earnings history and just look at it. See if there seems to be something missing. If it's good to go, then you've checked that box. But if not, you might have something to work with here to increase the size of your Social Security payment. Next, count your years. If you have less than 35 years of earnings, make sure you add zeros in because those will impact the size of your payment. Next, look at your low earnings years. For most people, that's anything that they had under age 25, let's say, or if they worked part-time while they were in college or part-time while they were raising a family. Compare that number after you've indexed it to what you could earn today, and there might be an opportunity there to raise your Social Security payment. Finally, do the math on one more year of earnings to see what that does to the size of your Social Security payment. If you have a low earning year or a 0 year, see what 1 year does, then see what 2 years does. After you've done all that, then you decide when to file because you have better data, and with better data, you can make better decisions. If you like this video, check out that video. The first 2027 Social Security COLA estimates are out, and here's what they are. Also, don't forget to talk to our partner Chapter 440-703-1224 if you have questions about Medicare. This is Jeff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.